Good day everyone. For today, I will be discussing about Climate Change Act of 2009 and Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act of 2010. So let's start. Climate Change Act of 2009 is an act mainstreaming climate change into government policy formulations, establishing the framework strategy and program on climate change, creating for this purpose the Climate Change Commission and for other purposes. Section 2, Declaration of Policy. It is the policy of the state to afford full protection and the advancement of the right of the people to a healthful ecology, in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. The state has adopted the Philippine Agenda 21 framework, which espouses the sustainable development to fulfill human needs while maintaining the quality of the natural environment for current and future generations. The state adopts the principle of protecting the climate system for the benefit of humankind, on the basis of climate justice or common but differentiated responsibilities and the precautionary principle to guide decision making in climate risk management. As party to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change or UNFCCC, the state adopts the ultimate objective of the convention, which is the stabilization of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere at a level that would prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system, which should be achieved within a time frame sufficient to allow ecosystem to adapt naturally to climate change, to ensure that food production is not threatened, and to enable economic development to proceed in a sustainable manner. Section Definition of Terms. First, of definition of climate change. For IPCC, climate change refers to any change in climate over time, whether due to natural variability or as a result of activity. For UNFCCC, climate change is a change of climate which is attributed directly or indirectly to human activity that alters the composition of the global atmosphere and which is in addition to natural climate variability observed over comparable time periods. In the Climate Change Act of 2009, climate as the change in climate that can be identified by changes in the mean and or variability of its properties and that persists for an extended period, typically decades or longer, whether due to natural variability or as a result of human activity. Climate variability refers to the variation in the average state and other statistics of the climate on all temporal and spatial scales beyond that of individual weather events. Climate risk is the product of climate and related hazards working over the vulnerability of human and natural ecosystems. Global warming is the increase in the average temperature of the Earth's near surface air and oceans that is associated with the increased concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Mainstreaming refers to the integration of policies and measures that address climate change into development planning and sectoral decision making. Mitigation refers to human intervention to address anthropogenic emissions by sources and removals by sinks of all GHG or greenhouse gases, including ozone-depleting substances and their substitutes. Vulnerability refers to the degree to which a system is susceptible to or unable to cope with adverse effects of climate change, including climate variability and extremes. Section 4. Creation of Climate Change Commission. Climate Change Commission is the sole policy-making body of the government, which shall be tasked to coordinate, monitor, and evaluate the programs and action plans of the government relating to climate change pursuant to the provision of this Act. It is the policy of the state to afford full protection and the advancement of the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology, to fulfill human needs while maintaining the quality of the natural environment for current and future generations. This, these are the function of climate change commissions. Ensure the mainstreaming of climate change, coordinate and synchronize climate change programs, formulate a framework strategy on climate change, exercise policy coordination, recommend legislation, policies, strategies, and programs, recommend key development investments, create an enabling environment for the design, create an enabling environment that shall promote broader multi-stakeholder participation, formulate strategies on mitigating greenhouse gases in coordination with the Department of Foreign Affairs. Moreover, formulate and update guidelines for determining vulnerability, coordinate with local government units and private entities, facilitate capacity building for local adaptation planning, promote and provide technical and financial support, and oversee the dissemination of information. The Act requires the Commission to draft several policies, namely National Climate Change Framework, the National Climate Change Action Plan or the NCCAP, and the Local Climate Change Action Plan, which is the local LCCAP. These are the components of the National Climate Change Framework. The framework shall serve as the basis for a program for climate change planning, research and development, extension and monitoring of activities to protect vulnerable communities from the adverse effect of climate change. The framework shall be formulated based on the climate change vulnerabilities, specific adaptation needs, and mitigation potential, and in accordance with the international agreements. Components of the National Climate Change Action Plan. Climate The National Climate Change Action Plan or NCCAP mainly focused on the food security, water sufficiency, ecological and environmental stability, human security, climate change, climate-friendly industries and services, sustainable energy, and knowledge and capacity development. Local National Climate Change Action Plan or LCCAP is LGU shall be the frontline agency in the formulation, planning, and implementation of climate change action plans in their respective areas, consistent with the provisions of the Local Government Code, the framework, and the National Climate Change Action Plan. Barangays shall be directly involved with municipal and city governments in prioritizing climate change issues and in identifying and implementing best practices and other solutions. Municipal and city government shall consider climate change adaptation as one of their regular functions. Provincial governments shall provide technical assistance, enforcement, and information management. Role of government agencies. The Department of Education shall integrate climate change into the primary and secondary education curricula and or subjects. The Department of Interior, Local Government, and Local Government Academy shall facilitate the development of provision of a training program for LGUs in climate change. The Department of Environment and Natural Resources shall oversee the establishment and maintain of a climate change information management system and network. The Department of Foreign Affairs shall review the international agreements related to climate change and make the necessary recommendation for ratification and compliance by the government on matters pertaining thereto. The Philippine Information Agency shall disseminate information on climate change, local vulnerabilities and risks, relevant laws and protocols, and adaptation and mitigation measures. Is the Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act of 2010 or Republic Act of 10121. Declaration of Policy. So these are the declaration of policies of the RA 10121. Section 3. Definition of terms. Disaster risk reduction management pertains to the systematic process of using administrative directives, organization, and operational skills and capacities to implement strategies, policies, and improve coping capacities in order to lessen the adverse impact of hazards and possibility of disasters. Disaster is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society. Disaster preparedness is the knowledge and capacities developed by governments, professionals, response and recovery organizations, communities, and individuals to effectively anticipate, respond to, and recover from the impacts of likely imminent or current hazard events or conditions. Disaster mitigation is the lessening or limitation of the adverse impacts of hazards and related disasters. Risk management is a systematic approach and practice of managing uncertainty to minimize potential harm and loss. Risk transfer is the process of formally or informally shifting the financial consequences of particular risks from one party to another. State of calamity, a condition involving mass casualty and or major damages to property, disruption of means of livelihood, roads, and normal way of life of people. Disaster prevention is the outright avoidance of the adverse impact of hazard and related disasters. Disaster response is the provision of emergency services and public assistance during or immediately after a disaster in order to save lives, reduce health impacts, and ensure public safety. Emergency is the unforeseen or sudden occurrence of especially danger demanding immediate action. National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Plan is a document to be formulated and implemented by the Office of Civil Defense that sets out goals and specific objectives for reducing disaster risk together with related actions to accomplish these objectives. National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Framework provides for comprehensive all-hazard, multi-sectoral, interagency, and community-based approach to disaster risk reduction and management. Section 4. Scope. This act provides for the development of policies and plans and the implementation of actions and measures pertaining to all aspects of disaster risk reduction and management, including good governance, risk assessment, and early warning, knowledge building and awareness raising, reducing underlying risk factors, and preparedness for effective response and early recovery. National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council provides for the development of policies and plans and the implementation of actions and measures pertaining to all aspects of disaster risk reduction and management, including good governance, risk assessment, and early warning, knowledge building and awareness raising, reducing underlying risk factors, and preparedness for effective response and early recovery. The Office of Civil Defense shall have the primary mission of administering a comprehensive national civil defense and disaster risk reduction and management program by providing leadership in the continuous development of strategic and systematic approaches as well as measures to reduce the vulnerabilities and risks to hazards and manage the consequences of disasters. Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office shall be established in every province, city, and municipality and a Barangay Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Committee in every barangay, which shall be responsible for setting the direction, development, and implementation coordination of disaster risk management programs within their territorial jurisdiction. Section 19 defines and enumerates all the prohibited acts, such as dereliction of duties which leads to destruction, loss of lives, preventing the entry and distribution of relief goods in disaster-stricken areas, buying for consumption or resale, buying for consumption or resale from recipient disaster-affected persons, and disaster relief agencies, and other aid commodities, forcibly seizing relief goods, diverting or misdelivery of the relief goods, accepting, possessing, and using or disposing relief goods. Moreover, misrepresenting the source of relief goods, equipment, or other aid commodities by either covering, replacing, or defacing the labels, repacking the goods, making false verbal claim that the goods, equipment, or other end community is tampered. Substituting or replacing relief goods, equipment, or other aid commodities, illegal solicitation by persons, deliberate use of false at inflated data, and tampering with all stealing hazards monitoring. Penal clause. Fine of not less than 50,000 pesos or any amount that exceed 500,000 pesos, or imprisonment of not less than 6 years and 1 day or more than 12 years. Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund. Not less than 5% of the estimated revenue from regular sources shall be set aside as the LDRRMF to support disaster risk management activities such as, but not limited to, pre-disaster preparedness program, including training, purchasing life-saving rescue equipment, supplies, medicine, post-disaster activities, payment of premiums on calamity insurance. 30% shall be allocated as Quick Response Fund or QRF. Section 22 is the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund. It shall be used for disaster risk reduction or mitigation, prevention, and preparedness activities such as, but not limited to, training of personnel, procurement of equipment. In capital expenditure, it can also be utilized for relief, recovery, reconstruction, and other work or services in connection with natural or human-induced calamities which may occur during the budget year or those that occurred in the past 2 years of the budget year. These are some of the violations. This violation is regarding the apparently erroneous and misleading damage reports coming from Catanduanes. It turned out that the Department of Agriculture's attached agencies like Philippine Coconut Authority submitted their own and most likely bloated damage report to the regional office without sending a copy to PDRRMO. The Manila Times reported the DND Misuse Disaster Fund. It says that they noted several deficiencies in the use of the use of Department of National Defense in its Quick Response Fund. In their review, DND's transaction as well as overpricing and previous unliquidated fund transfer made to the AFP General Headquarters, Office of the Civil Defense, and the Philippine Army. This transfer of funds using the QRF was not in accordance with the intended purpose of QRF, as authorized in the DND's budgets. COA said because it is defeat the purpose of the QRF as standby fund to ensure immediate action during calamities. Next one is the call for reform. They believe that the amendment should cover the creation of an independent DRRM organization with sufficient powers to fulfill its mandate, promulgation of clear guidelines on the use of country's national local DRM plans, the establishment of comprehensive risk insurance and risk transfer mechanism, and the full implementation of the law at the local levels. We focus on the first as its a foundation of reform, creating an independent DRRM authority.